one coming into the round. It's game number 3, and we're going to walk into a pretty weird board position, I'm sure. As Hawkins, looks like he's taking his turn. He's got a Jace out there. He's got a Crypt Breaker as well. Looks like he's activating Jace at this moment. Voldaren Pariah looks to be on the battlefield as well, along with a prized Amalgam. For Bradley Carpenter, we can see his board pretty well. He's got a plant token from Nissa. Looks like it's biting the dust, along with some other creatures as well. He's got an actual Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, on 5 counters. An Oath of Nissa that probably helped find that other Planeswalker, which is Gideon, ally of Zendikar, which is on 4 counters. Hawkins has now transformed that Voldaren Pariah. We'll take a look at the back end of that thing to let you know exactly what it does, for those of you who are new to it. It's a pretty powerful card, a pretty big flyer. And as Carpenter takes his turn, we'll take a look at Abolisher of Bloodline, 6/5 flyer. When this creature transforms, which it just did, target opponent, that's Bradley Carpenter, sacrifices 3 creatures. That's why his board was decimated. Now he's got to try to rebuild it.
I think the Pariah would be borderline constructed worthy even without Madness in this kind of strategy alongside Jace, which is, I think, a card poised to see more play as more people are moving to green, white, and Bant color combinations that don't remove Jaces easily. This card, I think, is poised for a spike.
It's a pretty nice card.
Yep.
It's a unique one. Can't go in every deck, but it is a pretty nice card. Another Screen-White Angels deck that Bradley Carpenter is playing, as I did mention, Brendan DeCandio is the one who kind of innovated this deck, a member of Team Next Ridge Nexus, that team making its debut here this weekend in New Jersey. If you do want to find out more about that deck after this match is over, be sure to head over to our coverage page. Nick Miller sat down with Brendan DeCandio to do a little deck tech about what they're playing and having success with this weekend. Looks like we're headed back Eric Hawkins' way. Which Planeswalker does he want to try to finish off?
Also not clear he even needs to fight that kind of fight. I suppose Nissa is getting close enough to an ultimate that this is a fine spot to take it out, but it's not like the activated powers of making tokens seem that relevant to me right now, but probably just easier to get the Nissa off the table. You had to do it eventually.
Well, exactly what he did, and he followed it up with a Kalitas. And now he's just going to pass the turn back after playing a land. Not a bad turn there, I got to say that.
And this zombie deck has a lot of workarounds for token generating decks like green-white. You can kind of keep up with your own token generation. You have flyers, attacks, planeswalkers. You can also just be better on the ground. So the deck doesn't have a lot of straight-up ways to deal with planeswalkers, but enough sideways workarounds that you get into boards like this all the time where it's manageable, even though Carpenter appears to have both Gideon and Nissa in play for multiple turns.
Fortified Village came down. Carpenter revealed a Plains to be able to have it on the battlefield untapped. Here's another copy of Nissa of Voice of Zendikar. It's going to churn out a plant token. Now, how will Carpenter use the Nissa, I suppose, is the question.
Looks like he went straight for a plant.
Yep. Has he used Gideon yet? I don't believe so. Looks like he's going to make a Knight ally with Gideon. Yep. Both Planeswalkers have been used. Now, one card that Carpenter has in his hand is a copy of Stasis Snare, I believe.
Sure.
However, I think it's a pretty tough decision on which creature you're supposed to Stasis Snare. The Abolisher of Bloodline, 6/5 flyer, that's checking your Planeswalkers. But Kalitas, if it goes unchecked, can win a game all by itself.
It feels like the flyer is the bigger short and medium term concern. Kalitas definitely is the stronger of the two if the game goes on long. It's possible Carpenter wants to position himself for a damage race where he loses a Planeswalker this turn. Surprise takes care of Kalitas with the Stasis Snare and then starts pushing on his turn. Okay. With Hawkins at 17, though, that seems a little rough.
Looks like Kalitas is going to come into the red zone here as well as the Abolisher of Bloodlines. We'll find out where both of these creatures are attacking. It looks like they might be both going towards Nissa, but we'll get confirmation. And Eric does it for us, because Eric has been in the feature match here before.
Yeah. Good guy. Thanks, Eric.
That's right. Kalitas is going over to Nissa. Abolisher of Bloodlines is going over to Gideon. Now we're going to see that Stasis Snare here from Brad. See if this is going to resolve or not. It's going to go after the Abolisher of Bloodlines.
And I think Carpenter's probably just going to play this block straight up if he gets a chance to, with a double block with the 2 tokens.
Now, interesting enough, we'll take a look at the Abolisher of Bloodlines one more time. And the reason we're able to do that, and the reason we want to do that, is because It's an Eldrazi Vampire, which Eric can sacrifice to the Cletus. Yes. We'll take a look at Cletus now very quickly as well. See, you think only zombie, don't you?
Yep.
Most of the time, that's what people think.
That is my first time seeing that.
Uh-huh.
So I guess Carpenter should have main phased the Stasis Snare if that was the plan.
Perhaps.
We all learn. We all got to see things once, you know?
Most of the time, you see it sacrifice the zombies it makes. You don't see it sacrifice a vampire. And while that play was a nice one there for Eric Hawkins, how much will it amount to, I suppose, is the question.
Well, for Carpenter, being able to answer the air is the most important thing, because now he can leverage the Planeswalker. I mean, Cletus is definitely a huge long-term concern, but as long as there's some chump blockers in play, yeah, he's gaining some life, he's buying some time, but it's not pressuring the Planeswalker or Carpenter's life total.
Looks like Gideon and the Knight Ally are going to come across. One Knight Ally and one plant tokens still on defense.
And also, worth noting, Carpenter with Tragic Arrogance in hand as well. So he can sort of play this game where he's getting some incremental advantage here. He's going to force Hawkins to commit more to the table to try to overpower the Planeswalkers or get ahead on the table. And at that point, Tragic Arrogance can play cleanup duty.
Cryptbreaker is going to allow Eric Hawkins to discard Haunted Dead, which means a zombie is on the way. And now we're going to head back over to Hawkins, and he'll draw.
For me, the green-white decks are first and foremost Tragic Arrogance decks.
Okay.
That's where you're trying to get your edge. You're trying to be an aggressive deck where you're beating the control decks with your Planeswalkers and your fast starts, and in the mid-range matchups where you're a little overpowered, playing against cards like Collected Company and so forth, Tragic Arrogance is your breaker.
Well, Tragic Arrogance can be a high variance card sometimes. Sometimes insane, sometimes not so much.
But the green-white deck is very good at sculpting the games where the card is powerful.
That I agree with.
Because you can see the board that Carpenter is generating right now, it is forcing more and more commitment out of Hawkins. He can't beat him. Even with the Cletus getting large, it's not going to be enough for him to stay ahead on the table.
So Hawkins play another Cryptbreaker, which means he has 3 zombies to actually activate the other part of Cryptbreaker, a card we can take a look at because it's a newbie as well. A lot of cards from this deck we don't see a lot of, but it's an interesting little card. You tap 3 untapped zombies you control, you draw a card, and you lose a life. Now Hawkins appears to be returning a Haunted Dead from the graveyard, discarding a few cards, Distended Mindbender among them. He'll play a Swamp. He will also now play a Distended Mindbender, and now things have changed, my friend.
I was about to say, Carpenter had almost gotten everything he wanted out of this. Hawkins' hand was totally depleted, but the last card here is going to be able to strip that Tragic Arrogance out.
That Eldrazi Insect with the cast trigger means you get to look at your opponent's hand. You need to take a card that costs 3 or less, and then another one that costs 4 or more, and that player discards both of those cards. If you can cast this thing on turn 4 with consistency, it's one heck of a card.
A little weird to me that this card doesn't exile. Just because of the Eldrazi. Yeah, that's kind of a thing. And it's a rare, so you can justify the extra little points of complexity.
But now the Tragic Arrogance that Eric may have been afraid of, that's gone.
Right. And now, I think in spite of Carpenter's 2 Planeswalkers here, Hawkins is in a pretty commanding position on the table.
Well, I think Hawkins is in the spot he wants to be in, where, you know, he's going to get prize Amalgam as well. Very nice. I think he's in the spot he wants to be in now, where both players basically have empty hands. He can kind of overwhelm these Planeswalkers a little bit, and at least check them with Haunted Dead and the spirit that it makes, and then he can keep drawing cards with Cryptbreaker.
Yep.
Not to mention he's got a Cletus going as well.
Right. He has an ability to at least keep Planeswalkers from getting to their ultimate. He's got better size on the battlefield. He's got a way to gain life, so it's not like Carpenter can simply race by plussing Gideon and attacking over and over again. So it's very well set up here.
Carpenter activates his Gaia Reach Sanitarium. Hawkins no cards in his hand, so he just has to discard. And now it's actually a copy of Gisela, the Broken Blade, that does show up here for Bradley Carpenter.
Okay, well, that's some defense for the Planeswalkers. That's something.
4/3 flying first strike lifelink. And now I actually have to do a little check to see if old Brun is hiding out here, and it is for Bradley Carpenter, at least in his main deck. We are in game number 3, so not sure if it's actually still in his deck. We can transform that and Gisela into Brizella, and I think it'll be very difficult for Eric Hawkins to win then, but we'll see if we ever get to that point. Hawkins, in the meantime, draws a card for his turn. He also activates the Cryptbreaker. Pay a life to draw a card. You got to tap 3 zombies to do it, which he's done. Patrick, I do want to bring your attention to something that does matter. It's that number that's ticking down in the middle of the screen.
Both of these players are in a position to absorb a draw because they're so far ahead of the rest of the field. A win would essentially lock the winner here for top 8, so that's a big one. This game has gotten a little choppy and a little uneven. I would be surprised if someone was able to get this inside of time, barring a really big draw.
Well, Eric's going to try. Here's another Haunted Dead. It appears. And there it is. It'll bring a Spirit along with it. And now we're going to go back over to Carpenter.
There are some big draws here for Carpenter, and he does have the Sanitarium going to try to find him. Quarantine Field, his additional copy of Tragic Arrogance. He can still break this game open.
Hey, he also has a Planeswalker that's on 7 right now in that Nissa.
And Nissa's a lot of looks at it.
It is. Carpenter will play a Forest, just past the turn back. He's done a nice job of cluttering up the board. Now Hawkins, he'll discard his Choke Estuary to get another 2/2 zombie. So now Eric will untap. It's time to draw. He has to tap a couple of zombies here. Pay a left to draw a card. He gets to see about 2, maybe 3 extra cards per turn.
I do not believe Cryptbreaker says this.
Correct.
Yeah, so you can just go wide with zombies.
That's exactly what it looks like he's trying to do. He's got plenty of life to spare, being at 22, and Cletus still gaining life as he goes. Oddly enough, Eric also has his copy of Gyre Reach Sanitarium in case he ever wants to start activating it. Sunken Hollow down. That'll make a zombie. He'll use that, along with the Cryptbreaker and a Prize Amalgam, to draw another card. Looks like he's only picked up a couple copies of lands, however. And for those of you keeping track at home, Eric is turn number 0 of extra turns because that's where we're at in the game. So Carpenter will have turns 1, 3, and 5. Eric, he'll have this turn, turn 2, and turn 4.
And I think at this point, Carpenter is probably on hold on for dear life.
Think so?
Strategy.
Yeah.
I don't know if he can get it. Even if he draws perfect here, I think winning this game inside of 3 turns is going to be very hard.
Here come the Knuckleheads. There will be some blocking done. And now it's a Stasis Snare. And Stasis Snare actually goes after the Spirit token as opposed to Cletus. The reason for that is because Hawkins was trying to knock Nissa down to 6 so it couldn't go ultimate. Well, that didn't work.
And that to me is a signifier that Carpenter is definitely playing for the draw here. He just wants to draw a bunch of cards, gain some life, be able to settle in and play defense for a few more turns.
Choke Estuary is the card that Hawkins will activate. Carpenter had no cards in his hand, so he just draws and discards. Hawkins will get a new card, pass that turn back. Carpenter with a pretty full board, with a Gideon on 5, and Nissa on 7. Gisela, 3 Knight Allies, and Stasis Snares taking care of a few things. Quite a few lands on the battlefield as well, so we'll see how Bradley Carpenter wants to take his turn. Looks like he's going to start by cashing in Nissa Voices Zendikar. We'll take a look at that Planeswalker so we can see that ultimate. You gain X life and draw X cards, where X is the number of lands you control. So Carpenter will be gaining 8, drawing 8, and I think one of the cards he actually drew for his turn was a Quarantine Field. Pretty good one to have around.
I don't even know if the Quarantine Field is necessarily enough to get Carpenter to lethal, but it's certainly a lot of defense.
But Carpenter will play an Oath of Nissa here to start. Take a look at the top 3, see if he can find something that he likes. Hangerback Walker in hand here for Bradley Carpenter, among other things. We were curious to see if Carpenter could actually keep up on the card advantage front. Well, he's found a lot of cards now, so appears he's doing okay. Now here is Quarantine Field. It is for 3, and there's the battlefield with 3 isolation counters on it. Now for each isolation counter on it, you exile up to 1 target non-land permanent an opponent controls. until quarantined field leaves the battlefield. So this is a very, very powerful effect. It's going to take care of Crypt Breakers and Kalitas. Now, one thing about a blue-black deck, Patrick, does not do a nice job of getting enchantments off the battlefield.
And I like the selections there from Carpenter. The Descendant Mindbender, he can kind of block and contain for a long time. He's getting rid of the Kalitas, which is the largest creature on the battlefield and also something that might gain Hawkins too much life for Carpenter to be able to win the game in time. Also cuts off the card drawing by getting rid of the 2 Crypt Breakers. So I like those selections.
Hawkins will untap. Time to take a draw. You see the life totals here, 37-21 in favor of Bradley Carpenter.
And now Hawkins might have to pivot and play defense here.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think from his side now with Carpenter at 37, certainly winning this game in the next 2 turns on his side, I don't think can happen.
I believe it got a little more difficult. Don't want to forget that Gideon last turn, it went from 5 to 1. It made an emblem to make Giselle a little bit larger. What is this? Hawkins says, I want to try to kill this Gideon and go after you. Does he have some sort of master rule effect I don't know about?
I mean, he's got...
You got Languish over there anywhere?
Not in the 75, no.
Okay. Gideon down.
I mean, now the battlefield's essentially clean. It's just the Gisela that's a large attacker here. Hawkins still has plenty of life to work with, and Carpenter only has 2 attacks.
Eric thinking about maybe passing the turn. Looks like he will. What are you up to here, Eric Hawkins? So we go to turn number 3 of turns.
I mean, this would not be a bad spot to madness in a pariah through the sanitarium.
Aha.
Because Carpenter, I believe, is now just down to the 3 creatures.
This would actually be a great spot to do that.
See you in a moment.
Looks like he's just taking the damage. Remember, Carpenter has all these cards in his hand from that Nissa ultimate. Well, I think Eric actually does have Pariah in his hand. Thalia's Lancers. That could search up Bruna or anything else, honestly. Really powerful card here is Thalia's Lancers. You're going to find 2 copies of this card in Bradley Carpenter's main deck. I'll tell you, if you like what Bradley Carpenter's up to here, even trying to play Gisela, this is a deck I think you should definitely check out the deck tech for by Brennan DeCandio. Hawkins is going to madness in that Voldaren Pariah now. Thanks to the Haunted Dead, which is going to bring a spirit along with it. And it looks like he's going to try to transform it. Yep.
I'm a little surprised that Hawkins just took the lumps if this was going to be the line of play anyway.
As am I. Pariah's going to transform into the Abolisher Bloodlines. That's why Carpenter is sacrificing 3 creatures. Now Thalia's Lancers resolves, and now we'll see what Carpenter does get. As far as things he can search for with this deck, 1 Sigarda Heron's Grace in the main deck, a Nissa Vastwood Seer, a Bruna, the Fading Light, 2 copies of Gisela, the Broken Blade, 3 Archangel Avacyn. And we can't forget about the Gaia Reach Sanitarium as well. And then he's got some fun ones in the sideboard. I kind of like it. Avacyn's going to transform. Going to wipe out some of the board here. And now we go back over to Eric Hawkins, who's at 7. And can Bradley Carpenter potentially cross the finish line here?
Remember, he's still got that Gideon emblem in play, so the Avacyn is lethal.
Pass that turn back. Carpenter's final turn. It's our final turn of the match. Can he win it? He'll draw.
A lot of lands in hand. I don't know if he has the last piece.
There's Plains. Sanitarium activation. Draw and discard. Picked up a Fortified Village. Hawkins will discard a Prized Amalgam. Here come the Knuckleheads. Discard these 2 cards, get back Haunted Dead. It'll bring a Spirit along with it. There are your blocks. And I think we're headed to a draw here, folks. Unless Bradley Carpenter has some sort of response that we are not ready for. Well, so here's the conversation back and forth, just so that you're all aware. There's a hangback walker that Bradley Carpenter did play for 0. That should not have died because of the Gideon emblem. So effectively, this all turns into a draw anyways. Each player missed it. And you and I missed it here in the booth as well. So
yeah, I thought he was discarding to the Gaia Reach Sanitarium activation.
Yep.
That's why I thought the Hangerback Walker was going to the graveyard.
Sure.
But he was trying to do it for 0 to flip his Avacyn. That doesn't work in that situation because there's a Gideon emblem, but
Correct.
all for naught anyway as a draw regardless.
It is a draw. I didn't think either player would be able to finish. You felt the same way. And